the times that we are living in, everything is connected. But the dark side of the moon is that also the threat as being internationalized. The really big challenges of our time, no single country can solve these challenges alone. There's a lot of knowledge in Japan. The Netherlands, we have different angles. Definitely more out of the box, but the level of execution of their work processes is like second to none. Although we are so completely different, we are quite compatible.
Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today we welcome Marc. You are the Consul General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, as well as a Commissioner General for the Netherlands' participation to the Expo 2025. And I think that's going to be our main topic for today. What are the Netherlands doing for the Expo? Why is it important? And how does it play into the bigger picture of the development of our societies? But also a little bit about your background working in the diplomatic field here in Japan. So thank you so much for coming and making time for us. Before we dive into all the nitty-gritty of today's conversation, how did all of this get started? How did you get into the diplomatic field? What interested you there?
I was thinking that you might refer to the start of the Netherlands in Japan, because that's a beautiful story in itself.
Oh, really?
Next year during Expo, we will celebrate 425 years of relations. And actually, it is making me kind of humble that people before me for like 425 years have worked on this special relationship. So I'm very proud to be standing in their shadow.
If I'm not wrong here, the Netherlands was the only country that was allowed to have a kind of commercial area in the Nagasaki area.
It's such a wonderful story. Allow me to elaborate a little bit.
Let's start there.
So try to imagine, 1598, 5 ships leave the port of Rotterdam. And they are bound for a 2 years journey in the direction of Japan. Netherlands, of course, already established a trade network in Indonesia, in India, in Macau. So many places we already had trade posts, but not Japan. And we wanted to go to Japan. So those 5 ships, they left, and actually only 1 ship survived. So the 4 other ships, they came into difficult storms. They had truly difficult times when they were fighting with pirates. So a couple of ships got completely demolished. 2 other ships returned to home, and only 1 Dutch ship survived and came in Uzuki, in Oita Prefecture in Kyushu. And on that ship were 18 sailors. So probably a couple of hundred must have left Rotterdam 2 years earlier, but only 18 survived, and they were bad conditions. On that ship were 2 famous names. One of them being a Dutchman, Jan Joseph van Lodestein. If you walk out of Tokyo Station, actually there's a statue, Jan Jesu, and also there's a neighborhood called after him. The other guy is one of the most famous foreigners in Japan. It's Anshin Mura, William Adams, the English guy. And he was the navigator on the Dutch ship. So that Dutch ship landed there in Uzuki, and actually those people really saved the life of the Dutch sailors. But that didn't last long. It was in April 1600 that they arrived, and the ship and the sailors were brought over to Sakai City, near here in Osaka.
I didn't know that.
And then William Adams, together with Jan Joseph van Lodestein, was held captive at Osaka Castle. Now, try to imagine, like 425 years ago, next year in April, when Expo kicks off, we have magic happening at Osaka Castle. Because the 2 of them were held captive there, and they were being questioned by later Shogun Tokugawa. Tokugawa Ieyasu, at that time, he was not a shogun yet, but he was more like the prime minister. And he was like a geopolitical genius, because before the Netherlands, already the Portuguese arrived here in Japan. But the Portuguese were way too influential. They were Catholic, and they were trying to work very hard to convert a lot of people into Catholicism. And they were quite successful on that. But they had like big ambitions with regard to how to deal with Japan. And actually, they made a deal with the Spanish to divide the world a little bit. So Portuguese would focus on Japan and some areas around it. Spain would take care of the rest. So this was like Portuguese territory. That's how they perceived it. But the Japanese didn't like that too much. So the plan from Tokugawa at the time, before he became shogun, was, can I find a way to get rid of the Portuguese and still have access to an international trade network? And that was the moment he got into contact with Jan Joseph van Lodestein, William Adams, and via them knew more about the Dutch trade work in this part of the world. So he made the move to give them a true position in Japan and make them very important. And afterwards, when he became the Shogun, he established a situation where he gave the Netherlands a trade pass. And that trade pass made it possible for us to establish a trading post in Hirado. So that was the situation, more or less. And he was trying to plot and work further and further to get the Portuguese out. So essentially in 1638, 1639, that was the moment that it was decided, okay, we're going to kick them out the hard way. Now, the Dutch guys were Protestants. So Protestants and Catholics, that's not a perfect combination.
Mm-hmm.
So the Dutch were happy to help him to get rid of the Portuguese, I think. And the way it worked out was that a group of investors in Nagasaki, 25 guys, they invested a lot of money to build an artificial island, Deshima. And that was meant to be used by the Portuguese.
In the 17th century?
No, this was like, early 17th century. And then the Portuguese were kicked out, and those investors were complaining to the Shogun. They were saying, come on, we invested a lot of money. How should we deal with this? So the Shogun decided, well, I'm going to kick the Dutch out of Hirado, and I'm going to bring them over to Deshima, Nagasaki. And so it went. So the Dutch negotiated, typical Dutch. So I think that the rent we had to pay for that island was approximately half of what the Portuguese were supposed to pay. But that was actually the start of the Dutch period in Japan, because right after that, Japan went into self-isolation. And that means that all the foreigners were kicked out. They were still trading with Korea and China, but the only window to the Western world was via Deshima in Nagasaki, via the Dutch trading post there. So for over 2 centuries, the only way to get more insight on Western warfare or medical therapies or science from the West was through the Dutch. So the official diplomatic language in Japan was actually Netherlands. And that explains the many centers all over Japan, the Rangaku, Rangaku, centers here in Japan. So this gave us like a unique position right until 1851, something like that, when Matthew Perry from the States came over with the black ships to open up Japan permanently. But that period in time is like common ground between Japan and the Netherlands for a long, long time.
And in a way, you were saying that this is very humbling for you to be the representative of the Netherlands here in Japan today and kind of carry on in a way this relationship between Japan and your country. Was this something that you were already interested in before you got into diplomacy? I think you have a background a little bit also working in security and international cooperation.
Well, basically, when I was like a 70-year-old boy and I finished my high school, I was deciding on my studies. And I had this romantic notion to go to Leiden University and to study Japanese. Well, fortunately for my career, it was a decision that I didn't take. I went to boring law school, but it helped me tremendously in my career. But there was a passion at the time, apparently. So I forgot all about this, and I pursued my career. And this was more in the realm of security, justice, intelligence. So I've done that for the whole of my career. But the times that we are living in, actually, everything is connected. So basically, there are no national issues or purely national issues anymore. Everything is like international. External is internal, internal is external. It's all connected. So when we talk about security and intelligence, when we look at cyber threats or when we look at the terror threat in the world, it's all international. So when we were dealing with the terror threats from the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq, there were many terrorists from European countries going to Syria and Iraq to fight there, and they would come back to some place in Europe as trained terrorists. But not necessarily that a Belgian guy would go back to Belgium. He probably would go to France, or to a German guy would go back to Denmark with a task to actually perform an attack. So the international collaboration between all the countries should also be on that international and connected level. Mm-hmm. When we talk about cyber threats, it does not make sense to talk about national boundaries because it's all international. So due to the fact that everything is connected, and there are a lot of things that are beautiful because of it, because we can travel, we can make connections all over the world, we can learn so much about new cultures. But the dark side of the moon is that also the threat has been internationalized. So that was my true belief in that time, and still, that you need international collaboration in order to keep your country safe, in order to make it prosperous and for the whole world to prosper. So doing all that kind of work, it really made me conscious of the fact that it is super important that if you are working internationally, maybe it's better not to talk only from your own perspective, but try to stand next to the one that you're talking to and to listen and to understand what he or she is meaning and saying, and see if you can establish like common ground. And from that shared perspective, try to find an angle to work together. So basically, that's that whole belief, like the world is all connected, so all issues are connected. So if we want to change and improve the world, we need to work together, and we need person-to-person contact to do that. Actually, this is kind of the definition of diplomacy.
It is, right?
Yeah. So my personal way of thinking was, okay, because I'd done a lot of work internationally, but still was going in and out. So I had defined for myself that I would like to do a chapter in my life where I was living in a different country, different culture, doing this work on more like the positive side of the whole issue of the world being connected and globalized. And then Japan came on the table. And this was like a beautiful occasion because it brought me back to that little boy from 17 years old. I wanted to study Japanese, never did so. And now I had the opportunity to come to Japan, live here in Osaka for 4 or 5 years, and work on Expo, which actually is a beautiful occasion where you can bring the world together.
You arrived here, if I'm not mistaken, in 2021
True.
to kind of take your functions here at the consulate of the Netherlands. That was at the height of the pandemic as well. What was it like to arrive in the country that you've been wanting to live for such a long time, but to have all these kind of restrictions and this slightly unusual atmosphere?
Yeah. So the most impressive thing that I noticed coming here was the fact that I arrived in a plane that was almost empty. There were like 6 people on this big jumbo jet. That was kind of strange. So Japan, being Japan, went into self-isolation. So even though there were like multilateral agreements on traveling without a visa, they reimposed the visa regulations. No moment to wait. So that means that nobody actually came to Japan. Actually, the whole restrictions here in Japan were less severe than in the Netherlands. I came from a situation where we had like lockdowns, like full lockdowns during Christmas or night curfew. Didn't see that before the Second World War or during the Second World War, after the Second World War. Never had a curfew. So like night curfew. So there were like really heavy restrictions on everyday's life. And then coming here, the biggest restriction was the start. I had to be in a hotel room for like 2 weeks of quarantine. And then afterwards, the whole of Japan opened up to me because restaurants were still open.
Yes.
There were some restrictions that you couldn't have alcohol or you had to leave after 8 o'clock or something like that. Well, I'm happy with that because in the Netherlands, I couldn't go to a restaurant. I couldn't go out anymore to do something outside. So in that way, it was more open than I expected it to be. And the second fun part was, you know, when you come here, you have this big bucket list of things that you want to do. And normally, I would not advise anybody to do any of the usual top 10 things to do because it will be like super crowded. But there I was, like having all these wonderful top 10 sites in Kyoto and other places. And there was like nobody. I had it all for myself.
Yeah, Kyoto during the pandemic was quite a nice experience to visit, actually, when nobody else could come and the streets were not crowded.
Exactly. Yeah. And this has also some similarities with the Netherlands in a way that people in Amsterdam, when all the tourists stopped coming and during lockdowns, etc., that people living in Amsterdam rediscovered the beauty of their own city. And there was this sense of, oh, it's really beautiful and how it has been spoiled with all these globalized mega numbers of tourists. And the same happened in Kyoto. People living in Kyoto were actually saying, well, we live in a beautiful city and it's better than ever before. But yeah, living in Kyoto is not sustainable without all the foreign tourists that are paying a lot of the money that Kyoto needs to survive.
Eventually, you got to experience all of these. You checked off your top 10 list of places you wanted to go, and you had to start taking your functions and kind of step into the role of the consul. Can you explain a little bit, what does a consul do nowadays? What are your primary responsibilities in your day-to-day, and how are you able to apply these ideas you had before coming of building the relationship with your partner country, in this case, Japan?
Yeah. So basically, there's a long tradition in the collaboration between Japan and the Netherlands. At this moment, we have more than 700 Japanese companies, and they're thriving in the Netherlands. We have more than 150 Dutch companies here in Japan. And actually, the connection between companies is super close. The reason for this is that although we are so completely different, we are quite compatible in a way that the Dutch are more, I think a little bit more creative, definitely more out of the box, more
direct.
Definitely more direct, to the point that people say, "Oh, isn't this rude?" Yeah, it's completely direct. You will definitely know when something. Actually, I was preparing for my posting, and I talked to the guy that's responsible for Netherlands foreign investments in the Netherlands. So bringing over Japanese investors to the Netherlands. So my question to him was, well, what does it take? So what makes Japanese company choose the Netherlands? He said, well, first of all, it's of course about tax regulations, but the most important is location. So the Netherlands is in the center part of Europe. So basically, if you draw a circle around us, it's probably 85% of the people living in Europe living within the 500 kilometers range. We've got this port of Rotterdam, Schiphol Airport. We've got great internet connections. Everybody speaks English. And he says this one is important as well, because with the culture and the fact that everybody speaks English, you get an interesting mix. So if a Japanese company starts a factory in, let's say, Germany, the Japanese manager that probably will speak English can speak English with his management team. But if he goes on, the factory itself, nobody will speak English. So they will speak probably German or Turkish or any other language, but probably not so many speak English. In the Netherlands, though, everybody speaks some kind of English. We call it Denglish. And combined with this directness, something like this might happen. So the manager goes to the floor and there's an order picker, and he looks at the Japanese and says, "Hey, you look Japanese. You must be the manager. We have a problem here. You should fix it." That kind of interaction would probably shock the manager for the first time. But that kind of directness gives you all the information that you need to have in order to make decisions. So that kind of connection, it is already there. So the overall vision that we have in a collaboration with Japan is basically we are solving global challenges together. That's our motto. And the idea of solving global challenges together is that the really big challenges of our time, like climate change or food insecurity or pandemics, no single country can solve these challenges alone. But if you work together and I work with you, and you bring your best game, your best idea, and I bring mine, and we try to work on synergy that might even be like the idea we both believe in, that will really kick it off for both of us. So when we talk about these big challenges, those global challenges, and you combine climate change with the energy transition, the Netherlands has a solid record on hydrogen, on offshore wind, on agrothermal energy storage, on circular economy, sustainable chemistry. Japan has a strong demand for these changes as well. So if you connect it, that makes like beautiful chemistry. The same goes for food security. The Netherlands is a small country, but we are the number 2 world exporter when it comes to agriculture products.
Wow.
So you have the United States number 1, and then tiny Netherlands is number 2. So these tremendous high yields that we produce, they are basically the reason for this is that we have a lot of knowledge and innovative capacities in this field. The best university in the world on agri-food or horticulture is in the Netherlands. So when we talk about smart agri or talk about smart horticulture, so the yields that we produce in our horticulture is tremendous. So when you look at Japan, there's a big demand for these kind of innovations. And also because of the fact that many of the farms in Japan are small scale, like family owned, or people don't have the money or the scale to do the innovations themselves. So that's where you can find a solid combination. When we talk about the whole issue about life science and health, aging societies, there's a lot of knowledge in Japan, but also a lot of knowledge in the Netherlands and a lot of demand of knowledge in the Netherlands. When we talk about the future of medicine, We talk about regenerative medicine, where we use the power of the human body to regenerate itself. Netherlands is a strong innovative partner, Japan as well. Beautiful Nobel Prize winning research, but also now on the path to building like really commercial products with it. There we can combine strength. So the whole job of being a Consul General is about, in my case, about finding these matches and trying to make them successful.
A few months ago, we talked to Felix from the Swiss consulate. And for the Swiss consulate, it really seems that the angle they have chosen to kind of foster this collaboration and have Japan and Switzerland work together is through science and technology and the arts. Does the Netherlands have maybe specific area that you focus on this collaboration, maybe trade or commerce, because there's this kind of strong trade and commerce background?
Well, basically, when you look at the Netherlands, we have different angles. So we definitely have a cultural angle to our relationship. We also have a science innovation angle to our relationship because we're focusing on very innovative branches. For instance, on semicon and photonics and nano research. There's really a strong field in the collaboration. And then we focus on investment and trade. So that's the portfolio, because we think we need all of these instruments in order not to have the ideas to talk about, but also the execution of ideas to make it really work, to solve these global challenges, actually. So not just research them, but also follow it the whole path through to implementation. And there we can make use of the tremendous qualities and power of the Japanese business society, because the Netherlands being outside the box, sometimes the Japanese are too much inside the box, I would say. But the level of perfection of execution of their work processes and their manufacturing skills, that's like second to none.
What are some of the key challenges that you're currently working on and trying to solve together with Japan?
Well, let me give an example. That's a colleague of mine just was in the Netherlands last week. So we brought over a group of 15 Japanese companies, universities to the Netherlands to learn about the way the Dutch go about aquifer thermal energy storage. And that sounds complicated. It's not too complicated, but basically when you look at the surface of the earth, and beneath the surface of the earth are aquifers. And there's water stored inside the aquifers. Sometimes the water will be cold and sometimes the water will be hot. And if you take out the hot water to heat your building during wintertime, you pump back the cool water inside the upper well. Mm-hmm. And in summertime, you take out the cool water and you use it to cool your house and you pump it down again when it has become more hot. So in a way, that circular system where you don't take any water out of the system, but you use the qualities of the earth and the water inside the earth to cool and to heat the world, that leads to tremendous reductions when we talk about CO2 emissions, 60% or more. When we talk about the heat island effect, with all the air codes here in Osaka, we know what we're talking about. Yeah. It's a reduction of 95%. So that kind of numbers are very useful. Japan has a lot of opportunities, but has not yet the full knowledge and skill to implement them. That's like an area where we use the Dutch knowledge to share with the Japanese companies to see if they can build an industry here. It's not that we're making a lot of money out of it as the Netherlands, but we're solving part of the global challenge together.
So in a way, in the diplomatic role that you have, you are trying to see where you witness opportunities and solutions to global challenges in Japan and introduce them to the Netherlands, and the other way around when there are some technologies and solutions coming out of the Netherlands to try to connect them with Japanese businesses. And after you have made this introduction and the collaboration is set to go, it's the private sector that will kind of take over.
It is. So why are we looking at government to do this? Huh? Cannot business not do it by themselves? And basically, in many occasions they can, so we don't get in the way. But if there are like new sectors or new contacts, we can use the network that I've established here, or we can promote the necessary policy changes to the policy cycle over here, or we can focus on collaboration between universities. So basically establishing the network, making it more easy for companies and universities to be successful. Because it's quite difficult to be successful here in Japan.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
From your experience, what are the keys to success here? What is necessary for either a business or someone to come here and make something happen?
Yeah, basically our line is always, you need to be really ready for it. So normally it takes like 3 times the amount of time that you need, the time of energy, amount of, really the perseverance to go through it. It's triple the amount that you need in other situations. And why is that? Because basically Japan is organized the way it is. It's very structured in a way, but also there's a high threshold that you have to meet in order to be successful. You need to have the relationship, you need to have the network, you need to have to apply the Japanese rules and regulations, you have the knowledge of the language and the culture. So that's really a big demand. If you just have a nice product that you would like to sell, you need to be aware of the fact that there's a high expectation when it comes to service and after sales. So there's a lot of things that you need to be ready for. And basically we say, if you come here and you want to find out if there's a market for you, do your market research and really in depth. And we can help you with that as the Dutch government, because we have a lot of expertise and knowledge on this. So do your market research, maybe find a local partner as well. Either an agent or someone advising you, or a company that you're going to collaborate with, because you have to do the after sales after all. So invest in your network, do your market research, and then come over and invest in the relationship. So don't expect to be ready with just one meeting. Invest in it.
It's not an easy position you have, right? Because you have to balance such different cultures. You have to make connections between a lot of different people in industries, in politics, and so on. Do you get any specific training to prepare you for this position when you kind of enter the diplomatic world and, you're being sent to Japan, you're going to take over this role. This is what you need to know. This is what you should be prepared for. This is what you should be able to do.
Yeah, it's not like a formal training. But like I told you, I did a lot of international work in other jobs as well. And basically, if you work on an international level, it means that you have to be interested. So you need to have the willingness to dive into it and to find out what are people thinking, how is their way of reasoning, what is their primary knowledge of me as a partner, what's my knowledge about them. So that kind of willingness to invest in a relationship, that's more, that's crossing every culture or boundaries thinkable. So there's no specific training whatsoever, but going through the ranks through my career, that has helped me tremendously prepare for this role as well.
One thing I'm curious about is in Europe, we have the EU, and there is a strong sense of collaboration within, at least an attempt to. When you are in a diplomatic role overseas, do you see the different consulates from different EU members also collaborating heavily together to make things happen here in Japan, for example, where you would work definitely with the German consulate and the Swiss, the French or other countries?
Yeah, definitely. So it's good to mention that there is like a EU treaty together with Japan that's making it way easier for European countries to do business with Japan and vice versa. So that framework is really helpful. But in a way, when you look at the Kansai region, there are like 18 professional consulates general there. And from Europe, we have like France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and then we have UK, Switzerland, outside of the EU. And then we have the US, Australia, and then we've got a range of Asian countries. But basically, when we look at European colleagues, there's a lot of contact. So we have a lot of insights we share, also because we all work on Expo. We all have some kind of commitment to Expo because our countries will be there representing our countries. But also with the total Kansai consular community, for instance, we have established a wonderful concept. This was an idea of Felix Musner, the guy he spoke with. Great initiative, also a great guy, by the way. And he came up with the idea to set up the Science and Technology Diplomatic Circle. And this is like an open diplomatic concept where we, 18 consulates general, we join and we make a long list of companies, research institutions, government bodies that we want to visit. And then we make a selection of approximately 10, 12 things that we want to do. And like every month, one of the countries is taking the initiative to organize a group visit. So for a company or a university, it's like a wonderful occasion. You just not have one country visiting you, you have like 18 countries visiting you. And that's like super interesting for them. And for us, it's like super efficient as well, because next month, my UK colleague will organize a visit. I will do it in December or something like that. But also the whole atmosphere within the group, like open it up, not keeping your contacts to yourself, but open up and share your information. For me, that's really fitting my personal motto that we should work on common ground. And if we're dealing with global challenges, we should try solving them together instead of doing things by yourself.
Common ground. You mentioned it twice now.
Yeah.
And that's the motto of the Expo, or the motto of the Dutch pavilion for the Expo 2025 here in Osaka. That's one of those projects that's been a long time in the making, and I think you've had a huge involvement as well into this. What does the Expo mean, just generally speaking? What is this event that's coming up next year, 2025, and that's been talked about a lot here in Osaka with signs everywhere, the mascot Myaku Myaku shown on every street corner, but outside of Osaka, Kansai, in Japan, maybe not yet so much.
Well, basically, it is a very old phenomenon. So Expo started in 1851. And when we look at many of the beautiful landmarks in the world, when we talk about the Crystal Palace in London, actually the Crystal Palace was the place where the first Expo in 1851 was organized. When we talk about the Eiffel Tower, it is part of Expo in Paris. When we talk about the Atomium in Brussels, it's part of Expo. So basically every 5 years an Expo will be organized, and maybe you could compare it to the World Cup for football, like 4 weeks, many countries, 48 countries from the world will be there. It's a mega event. Or even better, the Olympics, like the whole world's there for like 2 weeks, like amazing. And here we talk about perhaps the Olympics for social, economic affairs. And then it's like 6 months and the whole world will be there. So Expo in the past, in the history, was more about showcasing industrial innovations, stuff like that. And then it transformed a little bit and it went more about country branding and maybe also focusing on tourism, visit by country. We are a very beautiful country. But that is a thing of the past, basically because people travel everywhere. So you don't need to find out how the world looks like by visiting an Expo. People can find any kind of information through the internet. So it kind of evolved to where it's now. And now it's more about being a platform to look at the real challenges that we as a world deal with and how countries contribute to finding solutions for that challenge. So in a way, that's kind of interesting. So I was a bit doubtful when I came here. So will it be a success? How important? And is it still something that's relevant in this time, an Expo? So I was perhaps a little bit skeptical about it. But then I went to Dubai. So I was involved in writing the advice for our cabinet to participate or not. And so I did like this trip to Dubai to find out how Expo was functioning there and how our participation was perceived and how successful it was. And actually I went there a bit reluctant. So let's see how it is, a bit skeptical, but I was like blown away by it. And that was due to the fact that it's such a huge event, such an impactful event. And also when I looked at the themes and the whole range of opportunities for international conferences, scientists working together, companies that were trying to find out new deals to work more on offshore wind, for instance. Or it was like government delegations joining there in big seminars talking about future policy changes that we need to make progress. I was kind of amazed by it. And the second reason I was amazed by it because I was kind of coming out of Corona at the time and the lockdowns and doing everything online. And there I rediscovered the true power of person-to-person contact. So the fact that you build a relationship by person-to-person contact, after that you can make use of every internet connection possible because it is super efficient, but you need to have trust. And person-to-person trust is really powerful. So that changed my mind. But then I was looking to Expo 2025 in Osaka and I said, well, still, it might sometimes be perceived as like a big party or a big event with fireworks every evening, stuff like that. That should not ever be the case. So if you're going to participate in Expo, it should be a means to an end. So what we in the Netherlands do, and many other countries do as well, I think, we take our policies and we look at our priorities, the global challenges that we think that should be put on the agenda and the collaboration that we want to foster in order to solve these global challenges together. And we make them centerpiece of our participation at Expo. So Expo is a platform where we can multiply and leverage what we want to achieve. And if we have an inkling of a thought where we want to be in that collaboration in 2027 or 2026, we know what we have to do in 2025 during Expo. And if we know what we're going to do during Expo, we know on the road to Osaka, in the preparational phase, what we need to do in 2024 and 2023. So already for a couple of years, we've been working not only on design and the build of the pavilion or the management of the pavilion, but also on our program filled with trade missions, filled with scientific missions, filled with lots of elements in the preparation of those 6 months during Expo here in Osaka. So that's like a beautiful journey where suddenly an instrument has been created that will give full focus here in Japan on Expo, but also in the Netherlands will give full focus on Japan. So already during the last couple of years, I saw a tremendous rise in the number of trade requests, incoming missions, outgoing missions, scientific delegations, government and corporate delegations coming to Japan. So already it's paying off, and we are still in the preparational phase.
You said that what really fascinated you when you went to Dubai was the power of the theme and how all the countries kind of came together to express this. What will be the theme next year in Osaka, and how does the Netherlands motto, common ground, fit into that?
Yeah, well, the theme is kind of boring. So you really need to build up your own emotion towards it. The theme is designing future society for our lives. Okay, it's kind of a rational question. So analytical almost. So the subtitle for me is way more interesting because the subtitle is what is the happy way of life? And both questions trigger something where you try to imagine a future society, a world that we will live in, and find a balance that provide a happy way of living for all of us, humanity in this world. So I was thinking about it, and then it just suddenly struck me that Expo was already here in Osaka before. In 1970, there was the first Expo in Asia organized in Osaka. And try to imagine that was a time where there was not so much international interaction in Japan and not so much interaction in the whole of Asia. And suddenly there's this huge world-class event in Osaka, and more than 66 million people visited. And it was kind of an eye-opening event for many people. The theme of that Expo was harmony between progress and mankind. So already in 1970, they were focusing on the debate on, okay, there's a lot of advantages connected to progress, internationalization, industrialization, globalization. It's bringing a lot of benefit, economic growth, but it comes at a cost for the environment, for humanity. Can we really do this? Can we make it happen? So already in 1970, they were talking about this kind of balance. So I feel there's a close connection about when we talk about the theme for the next year's Expo and the Expo of 1970. And for me, it's basically all about inspiration for the next generation. So when I talk to people here in Japan that are now pulling the strings, they are in all the important positions. And they all tell me the same story, that they got inspired as a kid when they visited the Expo in 1970. And they saw the first moon rock in the US pavilion, and suddenly they knew, I want to become an astronaut. Or they saw, the first mobile telephone, and they wanted to become an engineer. There are so many people telling me this kind of stories, and they get all emotional about it because it really changed their lives. And now I'm thinking, here we are in 2024, next year 2025, and this should be about inspiration for the next generation. Because my generation will hand over this world to the next generation at some time, maybe earlier than later. And maybe the world's not in a perfect state. So it's a bit of a mess. So the least my generation, should do is to offer inspiration to the next generation, because it's the future that they will inherit. So they also deserve a seat at the table. We want to interact with the next generation and give them a voice at the table to see how we should go about. And an Expo that does exactly that, gives that inspiration and access to the next generation, that will be a wonderful Expo, and that's going to be Osaka next year.
This has been a long time in the making for you, and there are a lot of things you have to prepare, as you were saying. And one of the things we can see here in the mock-ups you brought is the pavilion from the Netherlands. This is what it's going to look like. We can maybe hold it up to the camera for those that are watching us on YouTube. It's a beautifully designed building, and I feel like this is one of the main things that people that will visit the expo will kind of interact with. They will see the pavilion, they'll see the activities inside. But there's a lot more going on behind this, right? What are all the things that go into the preparation of this and even the preparation of kind of getting this building set there?
Well, as you said, it starts all with the decision to participate. The Netherlands has always participated. So in a way, the decision to participate, also due to the success of the Netherlands Pavilion in Dubai, was quite good, quite easy. But yet again, you have to perform on a certain level. So that means that, what are we talking about when we talk about Expo? Are we focusing on the daily visitors? There will be like 28 million visitors next year in Expo, during the Expo. Are we focusing on them, just them, or is it more? Okay, so we did a breakdown of the numbers who will visit, and probably 90% of them will be Japanese. So this is like a perfect opportunity for the Netherlands, via the pavilion, via the visitors experience, to update the overall image of the Netherlands in Japan. That's solid. But for us, it's not just that. For us, it's also about the professional stakeholders. We will bring over many delegations from the Netherlands on life science and health, on the energy transition, on the digital transformation, on agri-food and horticulture. And we will connect them to their Japanese counterparts. So basically there will be like business delegations or trade missions or scientific delegations. And we will have, in the left side of the pavilion, we will have like an event area where we can host like seminars, do exhibitions, round table dinners for CEOs. We can organize many events during Expo. So for us, the importance is to connect and make a change in the interaction with the Japanese audience and the foreign audience that will visit the pavilion, but also, and this is like a high priority, to have the business interaction and the government interaction and the scientific interaction. And that's what Expo provides as an opportunity. And in this way, it is unique.
So it's interesting because it seems really as if there were many layers to the Expo. There is this theme park idea for the general visitors that will go to the pavilion and maybe try food from different countries, look at videos, interact with people from different countries. You have the professionals, and then you have the diplomatic level that are all interacting simultaneously in one space.
Yeah, definitely. So there are a couple of things that are important to mention, I think. In these times, it's becoming more and more difficult to organize a mega event because the cost of organizing such an event is like tremendous. So it's wonderful that Japan is taking the effort to organize it. But there's also a lot of skepticism because of, will the bottom line, will it be good enough for the taxpayers? Like this Expo, it will be paid for by the national tax, so the national government, so that's the taxpayer. Also, 1/3 will be paid by the local and prefectural government, also the taxpayer, and 1/3 will be paid by the business community.
That's where my taxes have been going to.
Yes. So people are complaining when, due to all kinds of reasons, we had all supply chains were disturbed due to COVID. Of course, with the numbers in the low numbers in the working population in Japan, it means also that scarcities are everywhere. Semiconductors are scarce, but also the number of people that are willing to work as a construction worker are low. So due to the cost of material, the cost of labor, all prices went up. So there was a lot of criticism the last year and a half in the Japanese media and amongst Japanese taxpayers about the tremendous cost. So there was this whole debate, why did we even do it? Why did we take upon ourselves to organize an Expo? And in my discussions with Japanese stakeholders, I always try to emphasize like 3 points are important. First of all, the purpose of Expo. It's not a business occasion. The purpose of Expo is to inspire the next generation. And if you do that, your program is well organized, you will deliver that, it's going to be a great success. The second, there is a bottom line to this project. But please don't underestimate the economic effect from organizing an Expo. So this independent think tank here in the Kansai region called APIR, they did some economic research on the economic benefits from Expo. And later their results were also validated by the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Infrastructure, so METI. And the overall economic effect is that basically Japan will benefit with a factor 4 to 5 from the investment that they are making. So this is like a hugely beneficial to the economy. That's interesting to realize. So even if you don't look into all the effects from economic collaborations, trade that will happen after the Expo, simply the cost that was connected to the investment that all the countries make into constructing pavilions. So the construction industry gets a big boom. When we look at the tourism industry and the travel industry and the hospitality industry, it gets a big boom. So when you look at all these effects and the trickle-down effects, because that money gets spent elsewhere in the economy, it's like a big plus. So, okay, inspiration number one, the bottom line number two, and thirdly, we need to talk about sustainability. So that was one of the point of criticism that I really connect with, because how sustainable is it that we build like this beautiful expo site for 6 months with many pavilions, and then after 6 months we take it all down?
I was going to get to that because
Yeah.
I believe it's a rule for the Expo that everything gets built up and taken down. And there are these few exceptions of which you've mentioned a couple, like the Eiffel Tower or the Atomium, or even in Osaka during the previous Expo, we still have the Tower of the Sun
Exactly.
in the Banpaku Park. But that's everything that's left. All the beautiful buildings that are there, the space is gone.
Exactly. So that means that even the beautiful ring, that is like an amazing creature. So try to imagine this wooden ring. It's like one of the biggest wooden structures in the world. So if you walk on top of it, it's like 2 kilometers, the whole walk around it.
Good
And
for a
it's-
run.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really going to be beautiful. But also after Expo, we will tear it down. So how sustainable is this? And I think that in the long run, it's not sustainable. So many countries are changing into this direction, like the Netherlands. So our prerequisite with the tender of the whole design and build of this pavilion was we want to work with an architect and a construction company that will make a construction, a building, a pavilion that will be completely reusable. Either as to give the pavilion a second life somewhere else, or it needs to be constructed in a way that you can deconstruct it and reuse all the construction materials. So that's kind of a circular design as a key, circular architecture as a key design feature. And many other countries are moving in that direction. And I think that's the way to go to. That's not a typical thing of Japan at this moment. So for Japan, this is like also a confrontation with new requirements in architecture and construction processes that they have not worked on before. And this might have a lasting effect on the whole Japanese construction industry, that they will shift into a more circular way of construction. Nowadays in Japan, after the economic lifespan of a building, they just tear it down and probably drop it in the landfill, and then we will have another Yumeshima or another island in Osaka Bay, and you keep on going through the same cycle. But this can change, and this might change after Expo. So our pavilion will be completely reusable after Expo. And this limits our footprint, and that's the way we perceive a future for Expo.
What about all the space? Because I believe they also built this artificial island for the Expo space. What is it going to be used for after everything is kind of removed?
No, actually, the island is an artificial island in the Bay of Osaka. And actually, it was been constructed 30, 40 years ago. It is a landfill. So basically, you set up a perimeter in the sea, and everything you want to dispose, you drop it inside that landfill. So construction material or all kinds of stuff coming out of the mountains here, you don't know what to do because the land area is limited here in Japan. So everything that you need to get disposed of, you put it in the landfill. So the big bonus of that is that you acquire another piece of land with it, because after it's filled, it's being closed, and then it will
So it's like a
settle
big
down.
tank placed in the water and then they fill it.
No, try to imagine like it's huge. So the whole Yumeshima area, you can eventually use it as a construction site for like either real estate, or you can build a theme park, or you can build an integrated resort. Like at this time, Yumeshima will be used in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like a normal way of dealing with it, but there are some limitations to it because the land is sinking. When we look at the international airport here in Osaka, Kix Airport, also 30 years old, it's still sinking with a couple of centimeters every year. So that happens with artificial islands. So you need to take that into account. So although Yumeshima was there for like 30 years, still this is a factor also in the construction of all the pavilions. Now, because all the pavilions will be there for only 6 months, it means that we can work with floating foundations and then afterwards take take the building out of it. But there will be a resort on the island that will have like a more permanent status, and they will use steel pilings for like they will be like 52 meters or something like that because of the sinking land inside the island. So that's the whole idea. Because it's temporary, you can use it in a different way. But the reuse of materials, that should be like a centerpiece of the discussion. This went onto the political agenda due to the rising cost, because people were complaining, like, we are investing that much money into a project that will only be beneficial for 6 months. It doesn't make sense. So in that way, it was also an incentive for the Japanese media, the Japanese government, to try to talk about, okay, we should have like more circular design. And if we're gonna do a construction project for like toilets here on the site, maybe the toilets can be reused in a different place. So that kind of direction, that's typically a bit not normal in Japan. It is now on the agenda, and things are changing in that direction. And that's one of the beneficial aspects of organizing the Expo.
I want to come back a little bit to your pavilion, and you have this beautiful round light at the center of it. And you have this video that goes with it that follows the light going through the fields of the Netherlands and the tulips and the windmills and so on. What does this light represent in the middle of all of this, and what is it going to kind of stand for?
Yeah. So let's circle a little bit back to the starting point of the Netherlands. We live in a country that's for like 25% below sea level. So we need to find ways to protect ourselves from the sea for over the last couple of centuries or thousands of years. And our solution to work on that was to come together and to find a different way of governing and find a different way of dealing with solutions. Because if everybody would like to solve a little bit of the pieces of the puzzle by themselves, there would not be like a full solutions for the whole of the Dutch society. By sharing our informations and sharing the expertise and making it possible to have a decision being made for everybody at the same time, we were able to create dikes. We were able to create solutions to deal with rivers and being the delta of Europe. So that way of finding solutions, that has really influenced our mindset. And bringing that mindset to the current day modern crisis that we are dealing with could be part of the solutions. So we think that the Dutch mentality, thinking outside of the box, being very open and internationally engaged, willing to share, willing to bring your best game and to share the outcomes of that game with others, to find a solution for those global challenges, that's our common ground. And that's what our pavilion aims to be. A common ground where people can come together, not just the daily visitors, but also scientists and people from the companies that are actually executing all the solutions for those big challenges, the innovations, scientists, people from government. By bringing those people together, maybe they can come up with better solutions that will be shared among more countries and where we can solve those global challenges. So coming back to the design of the pavilion, when you look actually at the facade of the pavilion, you can see it's like waves. It's like water. And when you look at the round circle, of course, it's like the sun. So the sun is coming out of the water. So this symbolizes a new day, a new dawn on common ground. So a new future that we can find on common ground by working together, by sharing our energy and ideas and expertise. That's the whole motto that we are working for. And we believe that one of the biggest challenges of our lifetime is how to deal with sustainable energy. Because we live in a world that's really needing a lot of energy, and still we cannot go on in this way dealing with fossil fuels. So we need to focus on clean and renewable energy. When we talk about hydrogen, it should be hydrogen that will be produced by using clean energy, not by using coal or other fossil fuels. We need to use like solar or other forms of energy to produce hydrogen. When we talk about offshore wind, when we talk about solar energy, those are forms of sustainable energy that we all need, and the Netherlands has a lot to offer, and we should all bring it to the table. We all should bring our best game to Osaka to share our ideas. And we think that this new and sustainable ways of producing energy, that's the key to finding also the solutions for all the other global challenges that we're dealing with. So that's going to be a central point for us. So when you look at the whole storyline about what we are doing there, and you see that Japan is also the country of the rising sun, so the sun coming out of the water, the new dawn. When you're on top of the ring and you look down on the pavilion, actually the roof is a mirror, so it reflects also the clouds and the sun and the moon. It's also like looking into a pond, it's like water. And then we also have, of course, a reference to the Japanese flag, as it's a rectangle with a circle in the middle. So there are a lot of tweaks inside of it. So actually people will go in via this side, and then they will move on the ramp, and you will actually be entering the sphere on the inside.
Oh, so you can enter inside?
Yeah, you will be inside.
Oh.
And it will be like an immersive experience when you are inside that sphere. And after that part, you will get out here. It's also part of the exhibition and the immersive interaction. And down here, there's a small cafe, a coffee shop, a gift shop. So that's your visitor's experience. And then on this side, we have the event area where we do like the seminars, the workshops, the exhibitions. So that's our whole setup.
Next year is when all of this comes together and people are able to experience this. I want to go back a little bit, a few years, because this is a huge endeavor to plan and organize all of this. And I'm kind of curious, where do you even start? It's like, okay, let's have the Netherlands have a pavilion there. What do we even do? How do we start? How do we get a pavilion done? And like, what was the process like for you to kind of get this all organized?
Well, the interesting part is that you are not just doing it by yourself. This is like an all-of-government approach, working together with the private sector. So when we talk about delivering a pavilion, we deal with a consortium that is partly Japanese, the construction company, a German architect who has worked in the Netherlands and is the most visionary guy on circular architecture in Europe, Thomas Rauw, with a Dutch architectural company, a Dutch engineering company, and a Dutch visitors company. So bringing that kind of consortium together in the whole process, that's like super interesting in itself. From the government side, we are dealing with a government agency that is very well versed in organizing expos and Dutch participations. So that's good. So basically, your first step would be find the people that are connected to earlier editions from Expo and see if you can tap into their experience. There are a lot of lessons already learned, evaluations, but also try to find the people who actually worked on those teams, because they can tell you stories that will never be written down, but they will tell it to you, and that's where the real lessons learned are. So then we deal with all the ministries that want to be involved. Like if we talk about life science and health, we talk about the Ministry of Healthcare, of course. When we talk about infrastructure, we talk about the ministry that's responsible for that. So that's an all-of-government approach. And then we talk about, okay, the top sectors, the biggest sectors in the Netherlands that are dealing with innovative companies. And then we talk about branch organizations. We talk about universities. So it's like a big group of stakeholders that you have to bring along to this point where you can say, okay, we are ready for the start of Expo. And also running a pavilion like this will means that you need to have expertise on operational issues like security here in Japan, cleaning, catering, doing like the event, hiring the guides and attendants. So we don't do that as a government ourselves. We have a consortium also for that. So basically it's bringing a lot of parties together and try to build up a team that will deliver a wonderful Expo. That's the most beautiful part of it.
That sounds like a very big management endeavor to really get all of these private sectors to agree on things, to coordinate them, to get things on time for next year's Expo.
It is.
How long did it all take, more or less, from the original kind of pitch and decision to have the Netherlands participate to, well, let's say next year when it opens?
So basically, every 5 years an Expo will be organized. So Dubai was like half a year later due to the climate. It was organized in wintertime. And then it got postponed with 1 year due to Corona. So instead of 5 years in between, there's only like 3.5 years in between. So we decided to participate, and I think it was like somewhere in 2022, like early 2022, somewhere, May perhaps. And the project team was formed, etc. So basically, the preparation will take like 3 years, something like that.
That seems like a long time and a short time equally.
Yeah. But the whole secret to to finding the solutions if there's like a difficult, complicated set of stakeholders, is to look at your culture. So within the Dutch culture, people are well aware of the fact that we cannot be successful as a country if we work by ourselves. So we do accept that sometimes we might go faster if we would go alone, but we also realize that we will go further if we work together. And that willingness to work together, and also the fact that it is a nice country. It's not too big, like 18 million people. Basically, like a lot of people where they are and how they represent different ministries or organizations. So the whole network part, which is super important to organize a successful expo, that's relatively easy. And the culture is one of working together, then we can make the best results.
On a personal level, what are you most looking forward to at the Expo when you attend next year?
So what I look most forward to is to deliver on the promise to inspire the next generation. So I try to imagine, looking also at the youth here in Japan, that for them, it's also a difficult situation. When I look at my kids, probably they will be okay. But I think that my generation will be in a situation that we reach the peak of our society when it comes to relatively wealth, ease of traveling, getting to know different cultures, levels of freedom. So the situation in the world might deteriorate a little bit. So the future generation will have less wealth and less opportunities to travel or to do things. It might be getting more difficult to buy a house in the future, stuff like that. And I see that kind of effect also taking place here in Japan already. And it's doing something with a whole generation. The fact that it's difficult to find an apartment or find a place where you can find your independence. The fact that you have to live longer with your parents. The fact that it's more difficult to get a job, to find a purpose in your life. So what I would like to see, if we can push more also within the next generation, to see if that they can get as energized as those Japanese people that I speak to that went to Expo 1970 and they got really fired up and really energized and wanted to do something with their lives. And I hope that that effect will also take place here in Expo 2025. So this whole country, Japan, and especially the Kansai region, I'm just head over heels in love with it because there's such a good energy here. People who interact with you, the kind of jokes people make, the level of openness, asking questions. So I think there's a very distinctive culture within people that is curious, but also there are more and more limitations due to the fact that people tend to isolate themselves a little bit more. And because of Expo is the fact that it's more about connecting than being isolated, it can make a difference.
You just mentioned a few large and maybe scary challenges for the younger generation. And we talked earlier about some of the criticism on sustainability and the finance that the Expo is getting. But you seem to have this very positive and bright outlook for all the possibilities and everything that's kind of about to happen or possible to happen in the next few years. Where does this come from, and how important do you think it is to kind of try to keep a positive outlook on the opportunities ahead?
So either you spiral down or you spiral up. And my personal belief is that by spiraling up, you open up and you are willing to investigate, to innovate, and to listen to different stories and narratives. If you spiral down, you will get a bit gloomy, and it's more dark there, and it's more keeping you down. So in a way, my personal mindset is try to open up and try to look around you and try to find new opportunities and possibilities. And then I've always learned that if you want to look into the future, you have to look into the past. So if you want to look forward, you have to look backward. So when I look backward, in society as well, the developments that we've been through, we have so many difficult chapters in our history as a humanity. And we always seem to find like new chapters, new angles, new ways to step forward. So there's a deep power in all of us and a deep will to progress, to make steps really together, that's what I'm counting on.
If someone listening to this is now interested in kind of exploring more the world of diplomacy and kind of getting into this, and perhaps specifically in Japan, what kind of advice would you like to give them to get started and kind of have this right mindset to succeed in it?
So basically what I always advise people is if you would like to know more about something, instead of just watching another TV series or a YouTube episode or something like that, try to read up on things, because if people have written books about it, maybe they have thought more about it. So that's really a good way to get a better understanding of culture. Second part is to talk with people, real life people, about how they see things and how they experience things. And my third advice would be reach out to a person that's already part of the scene that you would like to know more about. They are the most knowledgeable and probably always happy to share more about it.
So basically take more time to learn and exchange more with people.
Exactly.
Which is kind of one of the things that I've noticed from your work here at the consulate and in general. It's all on a more long-term scale, where I feel like in today's society, a lot of things kind of are very short, and everything has to be now, everything has to be yesterday, and we have to make the video shorter, the text shorter. But actually looking back now on the longer term is what allows for projects like this to kind of come together.
Yeah. So in a way, it helps if you take the time to slow down. And I know for myself, because I really resonate with what you're saying, is that you tend to swipe if it's not going fast enough and stuff like that. So your span of attention really, it's not going into the right direction. But if you retrain that to do something with full focus, then it will give you more peace of mind and more quality. And my jobs has always been on the strategic level, so always looking at the long term, but never forgetting that you have to take like real life steps in order to make it happen. It's not just dreaming about a future. No, it's making the first steps to go on a journey. That's my advice. Please, if you're not sure about the future, still don't hesitate to start your journey. You might need to come back, but better returning halfway than doing nothing and waiting for absolute certainty.
Thank you, Marc, for being so open with us and sharing a little bit about your story, your work here, and also all the interesting and exciting things that the Netherlands are doing for the Expo 2025 in Osaka. I'm certainly looking forward to visiting it and hopefully meet you again there. Will people be able to meet you at the Expo on the pavilion?
Definitely, yes. So I always say to my contacts here in Japan, Oranda no pavilion, kitea!
That's the right way to do it, and we'll put a lot of links to your page, to the work you're doing in the description, so people can find and maybe reach out if they have more questions and more inquiries, and they can look up online about Common Ground and the Dutch pavilion coming up. Thank you so much again for coming and making time. This was very interesting for me. I hope it was for you too. This was Unpacking Japan, and we'll be back again next week. Bye. Are you looking for another podcast episode to listen to next? If you like the one you just listened to, I'm sure you'll also enjoy the one that I've selected and linked in the description down below. Go check it out.